Welcome back. Tomorrow marks 30 years since the Srebrenica massacre in Bosnia, the worst atrocity committed on European soil since the Second World War. In July of 1995, more than 8,000 Bosniak men and boys were systematically executed by Bosnian Serb forces under the command of General Ratko Mladic, despite the town having been declared a UN safe area. Those events still reverberate through international affairs, not only for the scale of the crimes, but for the way they shocked the world into action. Joining me now, I'd like to welcome from Phoenix, Arizona. He is the General Secretary of the Islamic Community of North American Bosniaks, Mirnes Lemes. Mirnes, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran so much for making the time for us.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Mirnes, when we look back to 30 years ago, this was, of course, a build-up to the wars that have been happening within that area. But when the Serbs took over Srebrenica, how much of a daunting time was it for the people there, given what the United Nations had declared it, and, of course, what the forces of Mladic were going to do on that tragic day in July of 95?
On that tragic day, so many things happened so fast that it is still 30 years after that we are trying to figure out what went wrong. The International Court of Justice processed the entire case, all the people or the parties that were included, including the UN and the soldiers of the UN, and in particular the Netherlands as a country. And the court has come to the conclusion that the UN failed all those people. All things that you can read about, that you can hear on the TV, happened in around 48 hours. When the Serbian forces entered the city, people ran to the UN bases to be protected. And they stayed there for up to 2 days before they were separated, men from their women and children and elderly people. Men were taken to different places, different spots, in some cases literally behind the building, behind the base of the United Nations, and they were killed, murdered, slaughtered. Women were taken, they were raped, and then after approximately a day or two, depends on the cases, they were put on the buses, just women, children, and elderly people, and they were transported to the free territory where the Bosnian Muslims controlled the territory, and all the men were killed and murdered, and as you may know, more than 8,000 of them were killed in approximately 48 hours. Those who were lucky enough, they escaped around the bases of United Nations, and they ran through the woods, and some of them even were wandering in the woods of Bosnia for about 3 months before they stumbled upon a free city where they could finally meet with their people and save their lives.
Mirnes, Srebrenica, I've seen many documentaries on it. It was a peaceful town. It was a town full of love, a town full of deen. Islam was flourishing in that town. It's quite heartbreaking, isn't it, that a town like this could, in a minute, in a split minute, in days and in the hours, could turn into a mass graveyard. What was it about Srebrenica that really had this harmony about it, that people could relate to it as a town of peace and a town of warmth and a town that had Islam so rich in it?
Let me tell you, Srebrenica is no different than any other town and city in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnia and Herzegovina is a multicultural country. It has always been a country where Muslims, Christians, either Catholic or Orthodox, Jews were living together. Bosnia was a safe country, safe zone for the entire Europe, where anyone who did not feel safe but was different than other people he was living in that particular country in the entire Europe, they could find a safe zone in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnia and Herzegovina, and with its capital of Sarajevo, but that is not the only town, is a rare place in the world where within 100 meters, square meters, you have mosques, synagogues, churches, and other places of worship. That is what Bosnia always was, and even today it remains as such. Srebrenica was no different, but Srebrenica was in a particular geographical place. As you said, it's a beautiful town. It's a small town, but beautiful town with beautiful mountains, a very subtle place, a place where families could be raised. That's how nice it was, with a beautiful landscaping, beautiful rivers. I guess the only sin of Srebrenica town is that it is pretty close to the border of Serbia, where the Serbian forces simply could gather around the city pretty easy with the help of the country of Serbia, as it was actually ruled by the International Court of Justice that they were helped by the Serbian country, and they could surround the city and do what they have done. The reason that it happened in Srebrenica is because it was a United Nations safe enclave, like the safe zone. And not just the people of Srebrenica were in the town when the genocide happened. Many people from surrounding towns and cities also came to that safe zone to save their lives. And they stayed there throughout the entire war in the 1990s. And then with around 30,000 people that were in a town that could accommodate up to 8,000 people, you can figure out how much it was crowded. And when you have so many people in a small territory, it is pretty easy to do what the Serbian army did at the time.
Mirnes, before we go to the break, yesterday I had spoken to Ahmed Rustanovic. He's an imam who's currently still based in Srebrenica, and he said the separating of the men and the boys along with the women was quite clear, that they wanted to eliminate that part of the population in Srebrenica. It was well planned, it was well orchestrated. And when you listen to the testimonies of those who were brought to court, and I'm talking about the Serbian generals, especially that of Mladic, you could just sense there was no remorse in his eyes, because this is what they wanted to do. It was meant to be one thing and one thing only, and that is ethnic cleansing.
Yes, I'm glad that you mentioned Ahmed Rustanovic. I have to mention here, we finished the same madrasa, and I know him pretty well.
Mashallah.
And he just visited the United States recently. Yes, it was all planned. It was all organized to commit something of that scale. There is no other thing to say but that it was well planned, and the International Court of Justice also proved that there were detailed plans on how to operate. Let me just give you one information. For example, there are numerous mass graves, and after the war ended, the Institute for the search of the people who were missing in the war, they were looking for the bodies after all the testimonies, after we found out what happened. I'm not talking about one person, but just one case. We were finding the remains of a single person in 6 different mass graves, which means that after they killed hundreds and thousands of people, they put them in a mass grave. Then a month or 2 months later, they would just reburied the bodies and put them some other place. They were trying to hide their tracks, to try to hide their mass graves and what they have done. Only from this example, we can actually come to conclusion that it was everything planned. It was a huge operation where you needed excavators, heavy machinery, lots of people working 24/7 for months in order to do that. Killing 8,000 people in 48 hours, it takes a lot of manpower. And what we have found out, just try to imagine a person that's looking for his or her father or brother or a husband. You find one bone in one city, 100 kilometers west or east, you find another bone. Then another 100 kilometers south, you find another bone. This is a clear proof that it was all planned and organized, and they were just waiting for the right moment. And unfortunately, the international community failed those people. They failed country of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and they allowed General Mladic and others to commit atrocity and genocide, as you said, the worst genocide that happened in the European soil after the World War II.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Mirnes Lemes. He is a Bosniak Muslim based in the United States of America, the General Secretary of the Islamic Community of North American Bosniaks. Do stay tuned. I'll have more for you after this break. Welcome back to News in Focus. Mirnes, of course, the plan of the Serbs and the Croats at the time was this ethnic cleansing, was the idea of making sure that Bosniak Muslims would be eradicated from that part of Europe. But you're a living example of it. Ahmed Rustanovic is a living example of it. And thousands, if not millions, of Bosniak Muslims, whether it is in the diaspora or still in Bosnia, are still living proof that survival is there despite the genocide that had happened. Even though it's 30 years on, and even though the pain and the trauma for many Bosniaks still lingers on, given that so many have been able to survive, is this the idea of a Bosniak? Is this the spirit, the determination to make sure that this nation continues to not just survive, but also thrive?
Yes, you said it very well. One of the main goals of Bosnian Muslims, including those who survived the genocide, is to find a conciliation between those who were the victims and those who were attackers. It is sometimes hard to imagine for others, but we as Muslims, we are driven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His guidance, and we never seek revenge. The only thing that those victims, particularly victims of Srebrenica, but the victims in the entire Bosnia, and I have to add this another thing, genocide did happen in Srebrenica, and it was ruled by the courts, but it did not only happen in Srebrenica, it happened all around Bosnia and Herzegovina, all the parts of Bosnia. It is only Srebrenica in focus because we have a ruling of the court. But if you read the International Court of Justice in Hague, for other towns, you will hear atrocities, massacres, etc., with the elements of genocide. So the situation is pretty much the same everywhere. But talking in particular about people in Srebrenica, is that yes, they only ask for recognition of the genocide that happened. They ask for a simple "we are sorry" from the responsible parties, from a political representative, from military representative, from the neighboring country, which is Serbia. They are simply asking that because they are still undergoing the genocide. When you have people who have committed all those atrocities and they come to a TV channel like me today and they say, no, genocide did not happen. No, we did not do anything. Oh, those people, their own people killed them just so that they have something to talk about. That is what hurts those people the most. Yes, they have lost everything, their loved ones, their property. Dozens of thousands of those Bosnians from Srebrenica and surrounding villages live scattered around the world. And yet they do not seek a revenge. Those are soldiers who were a part of genocide in Srebrenica. Some of them still live in the very city. And people who live in Srebrenica, they see those soldiers every single day. Not a single incident happened that someone took a revenge. All they are asking for is a simple sorry and admitting what they have done. That is enough for Bosnian people to continue living together in peace in the future. But unfortunately, our victims are yet to see that happening from many of the Serbians who took part in genocide. And we hope that it's going to happen for the sake of reconciliation.
Inshallah, Ameen. Mirnes, I watched a documentary on a very elderly woman who said, we just want accountability for these crimes against humanity. A few weeks ago, if I stand to be corrected, Dodic, who is the current prime minister of Serbia, full out said, well, there wasn't really a genocide that had occurred. And in South Africa, of course, we had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where it had perpetrators of apartheid coming together with victims of apartheid. And of course, it's been reopened by our President Cyril Ramaphosa. But Serbians, from their rhetoric, from the way they speak, is there really a sense of wanting to have that reconciliation with Bosnians? Is there really a sense of remorse from their part? Given if you listen to what their prime minister or president is saying, it kind of feels different.
Yes, I don't want to generalize an entire nation. That would be completely wrong and untruthful. There are those who were on the Serbian side during the war who came out clean, who admitted in different ways, either through court or they just had a subconscious telling them that they need to do the right thing. But those who are accountable, as you clearly mentioned, that is what we are looking for. The only way the justice can be brought to light is those who are responsible are actually brought before the justice. But why, in a certain sense, you have Dodik, which is the president of the Republika Srpska, part of Bosnia, and others, his companions in the crime, they're actually not only denying, but they are hiding and protecting those who are indicted by the courts to be accountable for what they have done. And if they were not safe in Bosnia, they would run to Serbia, the neighboring country, and then Serbia would protect them. They would not allow other countries and courts, including the International Court of Justice, for those people to be brought before the justice. And that is why you can hear people commenting and saying that, yes, they're all the same. Maybe they have not done everything with their hands, but now protecting them as the system of the country, as the entire government is protecting them, regardless who currently is in the power, that just comes to a conclusion that actually they're all thinking the same. And you will also hear comments such as, if they had a chance, they would do the same. That is the truth. That is what is happening right now. Those mothers who are left alone, losing everyone they knew on the male side. Some families lost even more than 70 members of their family. Some mothers lost 6 or 7 their sons, husbands and brothers. And yet some of them know who killed them. And they cannot come to those people because they are protected by the system. And that is why it is really important. And that is why we are commemorating Srebrenica and urging the international community and anybody who is sane enough just to help bring those people to justice, because collective blame is wrong. But if collective nation is protecting those individuals, then they are taking a part of the blame on themselves as well.
Mirnes, one final question. Currently, we see the genocide unfolding in Gaza, not only in Gaza, but in the occupied West Bank. Palestine has been under occupation since 1948. As both you and I being Muslims, it's only natural for us to feel it for our brothers and sisters there. When you look at Srebrenica, when you look what's happening in Gaza and the occupied West Bank, it's so interlinked, isn't it, that the persecution and the ethnic cleansing of Muslims is happening at a scale we have not seen in a very long time, probably since the Holocaust, which happened in World War II.
Yes, I mean, the resemblance is uncanny. Just when we are watching what is going on in Gaza and in other parts of the world as well, when we watch what's going on in Sudan, when I was watching what was going on with Rohingya Muslims, and for your information, I lived in Southeast Asia, so I feel those people close to me. It just hurts. And the worst thing for me in particular is that I am reliving the moments of the war, because I spent the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Yes, I was 12 years old, but old enough to remember a lot of it. And it hurts that even though we said after the World War II, never again, even though we said after July 11th of 1995 in Bosnia genocide, never again, just 30 years later, we are watching before our plain eyes that it is actually happening again. And certain stories that we can hear, if you allow me, I will just share one of them. And then I am thinking how those Palestinian mothers are gonna go look for the remains of their loved ones, how their children have been literally killed in their arms, the infants in their arms. And one story from Srebrenica is when all those women were gathered in one factory, the front yard of one factory, one woman was in labor. And 10 minutes after she gave birth, with the help of other women that were surrounded by her, a Serbian soldier came, snatched the baby from the mother's arms, threw the baby on the ground. The umbilical cord was not even cut off. He stepped with his boot on the stomach of the baby and watched the baby die. And the mother had to look at from 3 feet away. Now, I know those atrocities that I, as a Bosnian Muslim, live with. Now, when I see the pictures and the videos from Gaza, now I see those mothers living the same thing. And you have to continue with your lives, and you have to strive to prosper after this all, inshallah, ends one day. And you have to stay sane and normal. And when you look at the other side, not to urge to do something of the same scale to them, that is real strength. And I only can think that due to faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those people have the strength to keep on going and continue living through the hell of this world that they are going through in Gaza. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this ends pretty soon, and that finally people of Gaza and Palestine in general come to peace, and that they can continue living their lives as Bosnian people and everywhere else somehow made to peace, and that we can continue with our lives.
Mirnes, absolute pleasure having you on. Shukran so much for joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you once again for having me. Assalamu alaikum.
That's Mirnes Lemes. He is the General Secretary of the Islamic Community of North American Bosniaks, coming to us from Phoenix, Arizona. And it's one simple message, Mirnes, and even Imam Ahmad Rustanovic had mentioned yesterday, even Faisal Dawji, a journalist who covered the wars in the early years. Remember the people. Remember those, the martyrs of Srebrenica. Remember them. That's the best that we can do as human beings, as Muslims, and the world at large. Well, that's all we have for you here on News in Focus. From myself, Faraz Patel, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.